Hello, creative, and welcome back to the Empowered Creatives Podcast, finding confidence between hustle and burnout. I'm your host, Victoria Hines, creative career coach, helping creatives just like you navigate those twists and turns in your creative career. This week, I have Cory Hardin, who is an actor, improviser, and writer, joining me on the podcast. So after committing to be an actor for the majority of his life after college, he pivoted recently and started taking more improv classes about 6 months ago. Fast forward to today, he's a co-producer for Voila, the musical. Is that correct? Did I say that right?
That is correct. You got it.
Perfect. That's performing at the IO Theater in Chicago on Fridays. And he is also part of an indie team called Wet Pizza. He's a BFA in acting from Western Kentucky University. He's gone to School of Steppenwolf, which, if you're familiar with Chicago, is a really big theater there, and is continuing to take classes at the IO Theater. So welcome to the show, Cory.
Well, thank you so much. Sounds so prestigious when you read it off like that. It feels nice. Thank you.
Well, I just love your bio because it's a beautiful, 5 sentences? I've had people send me 3 paragraphs, and I'm like, oh no. I'm so
Lord.
sorry. I'm going to have to edit down your bio there.
3 paragraphs. That's insane. Okay. We're doing too much.
Also, at that point, I'm like, well, now instead of sharing your story on the podcast, I'm just going to tell everybody your life story for you. So yeah, leave some mystery.
It'll be a 3-4 minute podcast, and that'll be it.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. So here's my big question. I always kick off the show with it. What do artists and creatives need to know is possible today?
I would say that there's more than one door open. And so many times I think people in your inner circle, people who really know you, they may say things like, you should try this. And I think they have an accurate beat on who you are. At least that was what it was for me. People were like constantly encouraging me to do improv. And I had a lot of experience with it in college, but I had thought in a very silly manner that it was for unserious people and that I wanted to be like a serious artist. But really what improv has taught me is that there's so much more joy inside of being a serious artist than you think. It doesn't have to be the suffering that we have ascribed like a myth to. It can be more joyful, even when you're working on difficult, challenging material. It can be more joyful than that. And I saw a Q&A with Bob Odenkirk at I.O. recently, and he sort of said the same thing, but he said at some point in your life, it's probably a good idea for you to take stock of what it is that you feel like you're good at and what it is that you've put too much energy and time into, and not in a way that's hurting yourself, but in a way that's like objective and in a way that pares down some of the needless energy that you are wasting in other parts of your life. And I think that's helpful. I think sometimes as young artists, we think that we have to do everything. And I think that joy and the happier parts of yourself and your creative path, that's going to lead you towards a more sustainable future.
I love that. Oh, and I could so deeply relate to that piece of you feel like you have to do everything. I feel like for theater, like for acting majors too, I don't know if you felt this way, but it was almost like in order to distinguish yourself from all of the competition, it felt like you had to gain so many skill sets. Like it was that classic, like be a triple threat, like learn how to sing, learn how to dance, learn how to play a musical instrument. Like I felt that it kind of like petered off after a little while, but it just felt like there was this constant need or this like myth that in order to succeed, like you said, you had to do everything or knock on every single door, even if the door was not a door that you wanted to be walking through and to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. Ambition is certainly a virtue. But I think you can be too ambitious sometimes. I think, especially when you're young, you're just not really sure. When you're in your 20s, you're in the first act of your life, and you're still just like figuring out what it is that you want to do and who you want to be and what it is that you're not, which is so important to figure out. Like, what am I not? And Jane Fonda, in a talk with Julia Louis-Dreyfus recently, she said that there are 3 acts of our life. The first act is kind of the hardest because you don't know what the hell you're doing. And then when you get into the second act of your life, you're like your 30s to your 60s, you start paring down the things that don't matter. You start becoming and emphasizing the person that you are, and people and things in your life that aren't supporting you or being really joyful about, or I guess emphasizing your joy, those can fall away. And it's not personal, but there is something I heard recently was like, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a hell no. So that's where I'm at the moment. Yeah.
That's a great motto to follow.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Hard.
Very difficult. Hard. Yeah. Because I don't want to disappoint people. And I'm sure a lot of artists are people pleasers in a way. So we don't want to disappoint people. So we'll say yes to everything.
Mm-hmm. What do you find you give up when you say yes to everything? What have been the repercussions? Yeah.
I think when you say yes to everything, you say yes in fewer times to yourself. And so you are not taking care of yourself. And so you are showing up to the things you've said yes to half of yourself, or maybe even less than half. And if you're giving half of yourself to people who are counting on you, then resentment will breed. Then your lack of energy will cause yourself to have resentment towards something like, why am I doing this? Why did I say yes to this? I think that saying yes to like taking care of yourself and saying yes to the things that give you joy and give you a lot of energy, that's going to be sustaining for you. And it's probably going to help you have a more fun career, because I think so many people burn themselves out because they've said yes to so many things, and then they don't get the things that they expect should come from the things they've said yes to.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time I did 3 understudy jobs back to back to back. And I met a lot of nice people, but no jobs came from those. And I thought that I was so tired because they overlapped. A few of them overlapped. And so I was learning so many things with little to no payoff. Only one job was actually paying me like a weekly wage too. So the other ones I was getting like, Chicago storefront theater rates, which is like anywhere from $50 to like $200 for the entirety of this stupid run. And you thought, I thought, okay, I'm paying my dues. I literally said to myself, it's like I'm taking math class in my freshman year of college. Like I just got to pay my dues. I'm not paying any dues. Mm-hmm. I was emphasizing that I would always be on standby, and I wouldn't say yes to myself, and I didn't give that time to projects that I would think were fun. So,
yeah. It's I had a friend really put it nicely. It was bartering hope, essentially.
Oh wow!
You're getting paid in hope.
Jesus, that's crazy. Yeah. I'm going to use that really soon. I'm going to say that to somebody soon, and they're going to be like, whoa, oh my God, because that's what you just did with me just now, bartering with hope. Holy shit.
Well, it's my friend Jay Renfro. Actually, I interviewed him on this podcast, and that's when he said that, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is spot on. Like, and he was in the Chicago theater scene for many years too.
Jeez. Yep. Okay.
And that's when I think when those two things put together, it was sort of this like realization of like, you have to go after the work that you want to be working on.
Totally.
Because if you cannot fall in love with the process, if you cannot enjoy the day-to-day life, then you're, like you said, you're trading it for some expectation that you think is going to happen, but may not actually occur.
Yeah. And I'm somebody who really gets weighed down by the expectations that I put on something. And so lately, all that I'm doing is if it brings me joy, I do it more. If it doesn't bring me joy, I don't do it.
Yeah. What are the signs how do you know something is bringing you joy? How do you clock that?
Well, with improv, it's been really easy lately because it just makes me laugh. So that's a pretty big indicator. There's the old adage of like the rule of 3 with choosing projects: people, pay, and the project itself. So like the 3 Ps, I guess you could call it. But I think it's like love. You know it when you see it, you know it when you feel it. And sometimes that takes a moment to figure out. But I think that self-reflection is worth it, because then, you're not saying yes to things that you don't want to do in actuality. And so if that means that you would be working with somebody who you have a good relationship with, you're not souring that relationship by being part of something you don't actually want to be a part of. Or if it's a new relationship with people, you're not starting off on the wrong foot. Does that make sense?
No, makes total sense.
Okay.
And when you're saying yes to joy, you tend to bring more joy into the projects with you too.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm so excited to get back to scripted material, because I've been doing improv for like the past 6 months. I'm excited to see not only how my craft has changed, but how me as a person has changed, and possibly how I can bring that into a rehearsal room. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. Does improv feel like, it's gonna be really nerdy, but like, does it feel like a side quest or like an important part of like your long-term journey?
So I'm so glad you asked this question, because the reason I started doing improv earlier this year was right around when the strikes were happening, the writer's strike at least. I let go of my longtime agent and decided I was going to move to a new one. I didn't have one lined up, and so I did a big submission, and nobody got back to me at all. And so it was a pretty dark moment for me. It was like, what is that in 3-act structure, where they talk about how the hero, in the hero's journey, they go through like the night of something about the darkest night of the dark night of the soul. That's what it is. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do improv, because what's it matter? What am I going to lose? So it didn't start off as something I was like, I need this to be the thing for me. It started off as like, I'm just going to do this because it's fun. And I said to myself almost every time I went into class, like, I'm just doing this for fun. I'm doing this for joy. I'm doing this for blah, blah, blah. That's it. And so it wasn't even a side quest. It was just a thing that I just started doing now. And I remember the moment where I looked at my level 1 teacher and I said, I'm just about halfway through the classes. I said, I think I actually want to do this, because there was something, something really ephemeral, literally, because it's improv, that was being built. And it feels like there are these really lovely, beautiful moments where like reaching for something that's bigger than ourselves. And that keeps me coming back. So now it's not even that this is a primary thing, or that this is a side quest thing. I think that improv is like a thing that I'm going to be able to come back to over and over and over again in my life. Like going to the gym. It's just a thing that will be there that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's so funny too how sometimes we, like in your instance, you said yes to something because you needed it in the moment. Your friends were recommending it. They were like, why don't you try this thing? But we also, you never know when that thing is going to seed itself into the rest of your life. Like I know I did traveling murder mystery shows, which was my form of improv for years. And now when I go, I sometimes do for my full-time day job, I teach and I facilitate and I run classes. And I don't have a traditional background, but my coworkers are always amazed. They're like, oh, you held the room and engaged the room really well. And I'm like, yep, I know how to do that. I learned that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? That's probably from your acting background, and just our ability as artists to not be afraid of looking stupid in front of people. I think that's a really important thing, because I think when people say that like their number 1 or number 2 biggest fear is speaking in front of people, they're just afraid of looking stupid. And I think a lot of us are willing to take risks, willing to take that risk.
How do you think improv and this newfound like finding the joy, how is that going to, you feel like, impact your creative career moving forward? Or how do you want it to impact it? Let's put it that way.
No, it's a good question, and one that I think about a lot. So much more gets taught to people when they do improv than just basically how to combat your fear of something may or may not, of something happening or not happening in the moment. When you're in class, especially at IO, for instance, they talk about theme, and they talk about energy, and they talk about point of view, which is your character, how your character sees the world. They talk about form and structure. So many of these things that this really ephemeral art form is teaching you are things that you can bring back into other areas of your creative life. If you're a writer, thinking about theme and like what are the overarching things that connect your story together is extremely important. When you're an actor, how can I have a strong point of view, but also be really connected to my partner? That's an extremely important skill. How can I bring energy to just about anything that I do? And if I am lacking energy, perhaps that's something that I need to think about. Like, if I don't have energy for this, there may be a reason why. And there's so many studies, like even with doctors who are made to do improv, their empathy gets built up and they have better bedside manner with their patients. I truly believe that one of the things that is like holding back the theater community here in Chicago is that the improv community and the theater community hardly ever blend over. And yet, the person who was really the glue between those two communities was Sheldon Patinkin, and him and Martha Lavey and there's another Del Close and Sharna Halpern to a certain extent. They all had the guy who just retired from the Goodman as well, who ran it for a long time. I'm so bad with names. They all like crossbred into each other, and they all helped each other. And there was an emphasis on artistic creativity going forward, not this like these lines of division or looking down upon like, well, they're not serious artists because they do improv. Well, those people are too stuffy because they do, theater, and they think, they're God's gift to humanity. It's a lot more creative crossbreeding needs to be happening. A creative crossover, I guess.
I definitely felt that way too. I even felt that way about, there was a networking group called True Chicago. Just so interesting, but it's mostly like advertising, photographers, graphic designers, like clothing designers. It was a lot of different, like TV production, music, like it was a lot of different creatives in different aspects. And it was so fascinating sometimes going to these events because I was like, well, I'm the only like theater performance artist here. Like there's not very many other. Sometimes I'd run into dancers, but like there'd be musicians there. And I was like, that's so fascinating to me that I feel like theater especially like locked itself in this like bubble.
Totally.
And all of these like really cool, like it was so humbling and eye-opening to have a conversation with a graphic designer or to have a conversation with a visual artist or a restaurateur who's opening up a brand new restaurant. And it just fed so much more life. And it was such a fascinating, I decided not to try and address it, but it was such a fascinating like bubble that was created that was almost limiting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once you become aware of the fact that like you're not the only one who's trying to help people get beyond this corporal form or whatever, then you feel like you kind of got some partners in crime. It's just getting those people, that community, to be together is a very difficult task in itself. Bob Falls is the name I was trying to come up with. Yes. Yeah.
No worries.
The togetherness of the old Chicago theater and the old Chicago artistic scene in general, I guess it may be a myth or it may not be. It seemed like it was really after something bigger than itself, which I don't want to shit on the way things are at the moment, because there's also some beautiful things that are accruing and happening at the moment. So, yeah.
Yeah. The one constant is change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But the more things change, the more they remain the same. That's also a thing. Yeah. But the more things stay the same, the more they change. Anyway, that's a song lyric.
Hey there, creative. I have a delightful invitation just for you. Imagine diving even deeper into the incredible world of living your life as an empowered creative, including more tips, tricks, and advice arriving straight into your inbox. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, guess what? I've got something special brewing, and I don't want you to miss out. Introducing my oh-so-awesome bi-weekly email newsletter. It's a vibrant community bursting with passion, curiosity, and the love of building a creative life. By joining my newsletter, you'll get first access to new promotions and launches, as well as my welcoming voice in your ear every other week. Also, I'll share with you my creative career audit worksheet, a secret tool myself and clients have used during our own career transitions and pivots. So don't miss this opportunity to be my pen pal, as well as deepen your connection with fellow empowered creatives by heading to www.victoriahines.com or following the link in the show notes below. Thank you for being such an incredible listener, and I really look forward to sharing this exciting journey with you through both the podcast and my newsletter. Now, let's dive back into the show. So, I want to go back to this moment. So you said a lot of your friends were recommending that you kind of hop into improv. What made you resist it for so long?
I wanted to be a serious actor. I wanted to be an actor with a capital A. And yeah, I just didn't think that there was any room for play. I thought that if in order for me to be the thing that I wanted to be, I needed to be really serious about it, you know. And there is something to be said about taking your work seriously, but if there's no room for play, then you're missing that in the moment quality that we so desperately crave as both audience members and performers. Because you don't come to the theater in any style to see something as it's always been done. You come hoping for something fresh and new and something to really excite you and kind of shake you to your soul. Mark Rylance says that if you went to a restaurant and they served you the leftovers, you'd be disappointed. Now, I'm certain that there is a restaurant somewhere that is thinking about leftovers as a way to like start a restaurant, and some private equity company is like, that sounds like a great idea. But the point is, you don't go to things to have them like recitated to you or done for you in the way that they've always been done. That's why AI is so disgusting, because it only can give you what has been done before. It hasn't gone through a breakup. It hasn't like breathed air once. It is not living. It is just creating things from things that have already been created. And I know at a certain point, nothing is new under the sun, but everybody's perspective and everybody's soul is different. And that's why we go to see the theater, is because it's live. And I really think that people they're craving that. They just don't remember that they need it. That's why I'm on a rant now. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That's why movie theaters are down. That's why theater is down in general, because people got so comfy with being at home. I think being with each other is so important for us to remember, and I'm hoping that people will come back together again in a large way like we used to, because it's so important to experience stuff as a community.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting road. I mean, the desire for human connection isn't going anywhere. Like that's a millennia old.
Yeah.
It's in our DNA. But it'll be interesting to see how it morphs and changes.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing I've realized is like nothing. Yeah, there's also space to let it grow and shift and change and.
Yeah, but the AMC commercial with Nicole Kidman is correct. somehow heartbreak does feel good in a place like this. It does. Like experiencing things together is so much better if it's devastating, it's better if you feel it with other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know you're like on this, you talked about, especially something with improv is being in the moment and being present. Are there any tactics or strategies that you would recommend that artists, creatives could take into, like whether they're a writer or videographer or comedian or anything, like are there tactics or strategies you have learned from improv that you could take into your life or into like a different creative field that you think would be helpful?
Yeah. One starts outside of the room, and that's with yourself, and that's meditation, any kind of meditation. But I practice TM. I'm supposed to do it twice a day for 20 minutes both times. I only do it once a day for 20 minutes, but it really helps me, helps the stress and the anxiety in my brain go down, be lower, so that I'm able to be more fully present in the room. This is sort of when it comes to being in the room, this is the arithmetic I'm trying to solve every time I'm in the room or every time I'm in a show is how do I become more present? And I think it's through your partner. I think it's through the people that you're with. I'm reading this book right now called The Art of Is. And in it, he says that what we do, our creative field is nothing without each other. That the creativity itself is not powerful. It's the effect it has on you, and it's the effect it has on the people that you're with. So when you're an actor, the most important person with you is your scene partner. And I think that extends to everything. As long as you're trying to draw whatever it is that's happening between you and somebody else, whether or not you're a videographer, whether or not you're a visual artist. I guess a visual artist would be different because it's kind of just you, and a writer is different. It's kind of just you, but like, what's the subject you're working with? I guess.
But you're still looking to build something that connects.
Yeah.
Even if it's like almost like a postmortem. Postmortem's not a great word, but a post-creation connection.
Yeah. I think it's the energy that we get from each other. And just in general, there's a really good tactic that I learned in therapy that's you pick a color, like red, for instance, and you start naming things that are red in the space around you. You pick another color like blue, and you start naming things that are blue in the space around you. And what that does is like grounds you in the physical world. And then energy is just a really important thing to have. So taking care of yourself by sleeping and eating well and not drinking too much. Yeah. Everything that I think about is all the work's been happening right up to the moment that I'm in the room. So if I'm not taking care of myself right up to that moment, it's probably not going to go well.
That makes sense. It's all the pre-prep.
Yeah.
To the work.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to an artist who is looking to feel more confident in their career today?
Lift your head up, put your shoulders back. You got this. Really, it is just about, you do have to kind of fake it for a minute. And your physiological stuff that'll be happening when you do assume the position of somebody who is confident will probably then enable your brain to think, oh, I guess we're confident. That doesn't work all the time, but it has worked for me sometimes. And it's one of the things that my therapist told me. He was like, honestly, you really just got to pretend as if you're doing okay. I think the other thing to realize is that not everybody has the right idea or the right answer. We find those things together. So taking some of the pressure of needing to be correct in the moment off of yourself is really important. It doesn't have to be right. There is no right. There is no perfect. You will find it with somebody, or you will find it eventually, or you'll find maybe something that's even different than you thought. It's really important to take the pressure off yourself.
Give yourself the space to make mistakes.
Yeah. Those happy little accidents like Bob. What is his name again? Oh, there's too many Bobs in my life. Painter. What's his name? Bob something.
Bob Ross.
Bob
right?
Ross. Happy little accidents. That's right.
Yeah,
happy little accidents. Just like the happy little accident that I've had of forgetting so many people's names in this
That's okay.
friggin' call.
I was impressed. I probably would not have. I find that some days my brain can, those wires are working, and other days it's gone. It's just zapped.
See, I would not have been able to find Bob Ross's name without you. So you find it together.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So, Cory, how can we stay connected to you or see some of your work?
You can follow me on Instagram at Cory Hardin. You can find me on Facebook, Cory Hardin. And then I do have shows every Friday at 10 p.m. at the IO Theater. I do Voila, the improvised musical.
Awesome. So if you're local to Chicago, go check it out. Thanks, cool. Cory, for helping.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, creative, here is your one thing this week. I want you to track the joy. What activities, people, projects, environments bring you joy? Write it down and ask yourself, how can you add more of those things into your life? All right, creative, if you've been enjoying this podcast, don't forget to share it with a friend. And you can also rate, review, and subscribe if you are enjoying the show. It's the number one way you can show the empowered creatives your love. Until next week, stay creative.